Are you ready to fall asleep to these scary stories? Before you fall asleep, make sure you subscribe to my channel and like this video. And don't forget to tell me in the comments what time you're watching and where you're watching from. Sleep well. I've lived on this street for 35 years. When I moved in, there were orange lights on every porch and a carload of kids in every driveway. You could hear kids laughing down the cul-de-sac way, reverberating from house to house as if they had been given permission to be there. Now, by 8 o'clock, the whole street could just as well be empty. Curtains drawn, lights out, everyone pretending Halloween doesn't happen anymore. Nevertheless, I leave my porch light on. Habit, I imagine. Perhaps a glimmer of hope as well, though I would never tell my husband. He always tells me there is no use that no one trick-or-treats anymore, that we are the last holdouts. But every year, I shell out the candy anyway. This Halloween fell on a Tuesday. I remember because I'd spent the afternoon basting chicken and sorting bills, trying to make the house warmer than the season desired it to be. At 9 o'clock, only 3 parties had come, 2 toddlers in pumpkin costumes and 1 little boy in an overcoat. I was wiping off the counter when the doorbell rang once again. It startled me. The house was quiet for almost an hour, and I already longed for bed. I reached for the candy bowl and opened the door. There was a boy. Maybe 12, maybe. Not all dressed up, black hoodie and jeans. He gripped one hand around a pillowcase, loose, maybe half full. The porch light hit his face in a way that made his skin look almost colorless. Trick or treat? He asked. His voice sounded uncertain, like he wasn't sure if he was still supposed to say it or not. I quietly laughed, more from duty than from finding it funny. "You're out too late," I told him, and spilled a bunch of candy into his bag. "Yeah," he said, looking over my back towards the living room. Thought I'd get the last light. Something in the phrasing did register on me, the very last light. He'd practiced it, but not crudely, as if he'd thought about it, practiced it, maybe even intended to say it. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but he was already leaving. He strode down the driveway without looking back. The road was still. All the other houses were dark, their porch lights years ago extinguished. Only mine burned on, casting a tiny yellow patch that didn't reach all the way to the curb. The next day morning, my husband asked if anybody had come late. When I said just a boy, he stopped and then massaged his eyes. He said he dreamed someone was at the door, calling my name sometime past midnight. When he woke up, he went straight to the camera, half laughing, half unsure why it felt so real. We watched the footage together. The video showed me opening the door, holding out the bowl, smiling at nothing. My arm moved as though handing something invisible into the night. There was no boy, no shadow, no one walking away down the driveway. I told him it must have been a glitch, that maybe the motion sensor missed him, or the angle was wrong. But when he went outside later, he noticed something I hadn't. The small smudge of a shoe print on the porch, right where the light ends. Only one. That night, I left the porch light off for the first time in 35 years. The street was completely dark. It was a rainy Halloween night, and I was beyond exhausted. The day had been one of those endless slogs at work, the kind that drags on no matter how much you wish it wouldn't. And when I finally got home, I didn't even have time to relax. The trick-or-treaters came in waves, and despite the steady drizzle, the neighborhood kids were relentless. I handed out candy for what felt like hours, their bright costumes and laughter doing little to lift my spirits. The streets were wet and shiny, reflecting the orange glow of jack-o'-lanterns, but all I could think about was my warm bed waiting for me. When the last of the kids had gone and I finally locked the front door behind me, I sighed in relief. The rain tapped softly against the windows, and the warm glow of the lamp in the corner cast long shadows across the room. The silence was comforting, though, a welcome change from the bustling chaos outside. I kicked off my soggy shoes and left them by the door, dragging myself toward the bedroom. I didn't even bother with dinner. I was just too tired. My body ached for sleep, and once I changed into my pajamas, I practically collapsed onto the bed. The sound of the rain outside lulled me into a deep, heavy slumber, and for the first time all day, I finally felt at peace. I don't know how long I'd been asleep when I woke up with that annoying, urgent need to go to the bathroom. Groaning, I sat up, rubbing my eyes. The house was pitch dark except for the faintest glow from the living room, and the rain outside had slowed to a gentle patter. I could hear the occasional drip from the gutters. My body felt heavy with sleep, and I considered just ignoring the urge, but the discomfort was too much. Reluctantly, I swung my legs out of bed and stood, the cold hardwood floor biting at my feet as I shuffled out of the bedroom. As I neared the living room, something made me stop dead in my tracks. At first, I wasn't sure what I was seeing, my mind still foggy from sleep. But there, sitting on my couch and armchairs, was a family. 4 people. I blinked, trying to shake the lingering grogginess, but they were still there, motionless, silent. They were all wearing masks, not the cheap plastic ones you see on Halloween. No, these were unsettling, pale faces with hollow eyes, twisted into eerie expressions that made my skin crawl. My stomach churned as I realized these masks looked almost lifelike, but something about them was wrong. Too smooth, too blank. I hadn't seen them when I came home. Had they been hiding here the whole time? Panic began to creep up my spine, but I was frozen, my mind racing to make sense of what I was seeing. How had they gotten in? The door had been locked. My heart pounded as I stood there, my breath shallow. I wanted to scream, but the words wouldn't come. I took a small step backward, the floor creaking beneath me. That's when one of them moved, the figure sitting closest to the lamp. A tall man, or at least someone wearing the mask of a man, slowly turned his head toward me. The mask, a smooth, featureless face with dark, empty eyes, seemed to focus on me as though it could see straight through me. For a moment, the room was deathly silent. Then, in a low, raspy voice that made my blood run cold, the figure spoke. "You should have stayed asleep." The words hit me like ice water, jolting me out of my paralysis. The room felt like it was closing in on me, the shadows growing darker, and the walls seemed to tighten. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet, my heart hammering in my chest. The other figures on the couch and chairs turned their heads too, their masked faces slowly swiveling toward me in eerie unison, as though they were all linked by the same chilling force. Their blank eyes bore into me, watching as I backed away, my legs shaking. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't turn away from them. My mind was racing, trying to figure out if this was some kind of twisted Halloween prank, or if I had somehow slipped into a nightmare. I continued to back up, step by agonizing step, never taking my eyes off the strange figures. They didn't move from their seats, but their presence was suffocating, filling the room with an oppressive sense of dread. My mouth was dry, my breaths coming in shallow gasps as I stumbled down the hallway, finally tearing my gaze from them long enough to turn and run. The house, which had felt so small and cozy moments ago, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and whispers, the walls pressing in on me. I fumbled for the light switch, but my hands were trembling too much to find it. All I could think about was getting out of there, away from whatever was sitting in my living room. But even as I ran, their words echoed in my mind. You should have stayed asleep. On a chilly Halloween night, the air crisp with the scent of fallen leaves and distant bonfires, I decided to take a walk through my quiet suburban neighborhood. The streetlights cast pools of warm yellow light on the pavement, creating a stark contrast against the darkness that enveloped the surrounding trees. Pumpkins flickered with candlelight on doorsteps, their grinning faces glowing eerily in the night. As I strolled along the familiar path, the soft crunch of leaves beneath my shoes provided a comforting rhythm. However, there was something different about this evening. A lingering sense of unease danced at the edges of my mind, making me hyper-aware of my surroundings. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. Each time I glanced over my shoulder, the shadows seemed to flicker, and I could have sworn I saw a figure lurking just beyond the reach of the streetlight. I pushed the thought aside, attributing it to the Halloween atmosphere. After all, I had walked this route countless times before. Yet, as I continued on, the unsettling feeling only grew stronger, like a tightening knot in my stomach. It was when I first heard the laughter that I truly began to worry. It was a high-pitched cackle, echoing off the nearby houses, sending shivers down my spine. Turning to look behind me, my heart raced as I saw a figure emerging from the darkness. It was a clown, dressed in a tattered costume adorned with mismatched colors and oversized shoes. Its painted face was contorted into an eerie grin, and its eyes, dark and hollow, seemed to bore into my very soul. Then the clown began to dance. Its movements were strange and disjointed, as if it were both too stiff and too fluid at the same time. It twirled in a circle, arms flailing wildly, then abruptly dropped to the ground in a crouch, as though it were trying to mimic a child's playful antics. But there was nothing innocent about it. It felt like a twisted parody of joy. As it rose again, the clown's body jerked and contorted at odd angles, limbs bending in ways that seemed unnatural. It would take a step forward, then leap backward, as if caught in a battle between wanting to approach me and being compelled to retreat. The laughter that accompanied this dance was unsettling, oscillating between glee and something far more sinister, a sound that crawled beneath my skin. The way it tossed its head back, allowing its laughter to echo through the air, sent chills racing down my spine. The clown then spun in place, its oversized shoes scraping against the pavement, creating a sound reminiscent of nails on a chalkboard. As it spun, it lifted one leg high, the foot hovering just above the ground for a moment before slamming back down with a thud that felt ominous in the stillness of the night. The exaggerated motions made it seem almost as if it were taunting me, inviting me to join in its twisted game while simultaneously warning me to stay away. I felt a primal urge to run, yet I was rooted in place, horrified by the spectacle unfolding before me. Desperate to escape the nightmare, I made a split-second decision to cross to the other side of the sidewalk, hoping that putting some distance between us would help me shake off the clown's presence. I glanced back over my shoulder, expecting the figure to follow me across the street, but to my surprise, it didn't. Instead, the clown stood still, watching me with that same unnerving grin, its head tilted at an odd angle. I could see its fingers twitching, as if it were preparing to resume that bizarre dance at any moment. My heart raced even faster, caught in a tug-of-war between relief and terror. Could it be that the clown had lost interest, or was it merely waiting for the right moment to strike? With my mind racing, I pressed on, every instinct urging me to run. I glanced back once more, half expecting the clown to be closer, but to my astonishment it had vanished entirely. The absence of its laughter left an eerie silence in its wake, amplifying the sound of my own heartbeat. For a fleeting moment I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but it was quickly overshadowed by a nagging fear that the clown might still be lurking nearby, biding its time. The darkness felt heavier, as if it were pressing in around me, and the comforting glow of the streetlight seemed to diminish. As I reached the end of the block, I felt a strange compulsion to look back one last time. This time, I found myself standing alone beneath the flickering light of a street lamp, the night eerily quiet. My pulse pounded in my ears, and I half expected to see the clown reappear at any moment, its unsettling dance ready to resume. The thought sent a chill down my spine, and I quickly turned to continue on my way, my heart still racing. But just as I began to walk away, I heard it again, the laughter. It echoed through the night, now closer than before. Reverberating off the walls of the houses, as if the very shadows themselves were laughing along. My breath quickened, and I felt a rush of adrenaline as I broke into a sprint, desperate to escape the unseen presence behind me. I didn't dare look back this time, knowing that the very act could mean facing whatever horror awaited me. As I dashed toward home, the laughter faded into the distance, but the memory of that creepy clown remained etched in my mind. The experience would haunt me long after that night, a constant reminder of the thin line between reality and the bizarre. Even after reaching the safety of my front door, the unsettling feeling lingered, casting a shadow over the once familiar streets of my neighborhood. I knew that something had shifted within me that night, and though the clown had vanished, its laughter would forever echo in the depths of my memory. It was Halloween night, the kind of night when you become aware of a house breathing. The walls gently ticked as they released the warmth of the day, and a delicate autumn breeze murmured against the old window frames. The neighborhood children were long inside outside. Their laughter and the rustling of candy bags took the place of a darker, more somber hush. Upstairs in my home office, I was trying to finish one last bit of work before bed. The blue light from my computer screen had transformed the room into its own miniature universe, safe, contained, leading me to think that the rest of the house was merely background noise. Every now and then, I'd hear a faint groan from downstairs. Old house sounds. Easily explained. I remember glancing at the clock, sometime after 10, and thinking I'd shut down for the night in a bit. That's when I heard it, the front door opening. A hollow clunk echoed up the stairwell, that unmistakable sound of the latch giving way, followed by a waft of cool air that seemed to permeate the floorboards. Then a voice. "Hello!" It was his voice. Clear, teasing, warm, the same rhythm as my older brother. The same manner in which he always shouted out when he dropped in unannounced, as though the house itself was an old friend he was surprising. My heart missed a beat. He lived 4 hours away. I hadn't seen him in months. The idea that he'd chosen Halloween to visit made me smile. "Wait up!" I yelled, chuckling at my fortune. 2 seconds just saving this file. I typed for another second or two, fingers active on the keys, visualizing him standing in the doorway with that familiar smirk, hands jammed in his coat pockets, maybe cradling a six-pack or leftovers from Mom. And then, when I finally went downstairs, still smiling, all of the sounds within the house fell flat. The foyer was empty. The door closed. No shoes on the mat. No coat hung on the hook. Out front, the street was devoid of life, nothing but a couple of leaves scurrying across the asphalt, alighting and taking flight again like faint, wild footsteps. His car wasn't out there parked. No car was. I scowled, standing there, attempting to puzzle it out. Maybe he'd dropped something off and walked around to retrieve something from the trunk. Maybe he was playing some odd older brother trick. I opened the door. The cold air bit more than I'd expected, as though it had been waiting on the other side. There was nothing but night. Vast amounts of it. No sign of him. Half amused, half wary, I went in, shutting the door quietly behind me. The way the latch caught that little metallic click sounded more audible than it had previously. Eventually, I simply shrugged it off. If he'd stopped by and taken off again, that was his issue. Classic older brother move. I'd simply ask him what on earth that had been about later. I ascended the stairs once more, the steps creaking in muted complaint. The light from the office spilled out into the hall like a tenuous promise of normality. I had barely sat back down in my chair, fingers poised over the keyboard, when the telephone rang. The landline's shrillness shocked me too abrupt, too harsh after all that quiet. I answered it. "Hello, little brother," the familiar voice said, light and cheerful. "Just a warning. I was going to go down in a couple of days, Sunday or Monday. Will you be there?" I couldn't find my voice for a second. I stared at the phone, at nothing, at everything. The same voice I had heard echo in the front hallway not 10 minutes earlier. "Yeah," I finally said, "I'll be here." We talked for a while, small talk, before we hung up. And when I hung up the phone, my hand was trembling. The rest of the night, I kept the lights on in the office. Somewhere in the house downstairs, a floorboard creaked softly, like an old house settling. But I couldn't help but speculate whether maybe, just maybe, it was the sound of footsteps leaving via a door that never existed. The excitement in the air was almost tangible. The crisp autumn breeze rustled the leaves beneath our feet, carrying the faint scent of smoke from nearby bonfires. All around us, kids were running from house to house, their costumes illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights and flickering jack-o'-lanterns. I was out trick-or-treating with my two best friends, Sarah and Lily. Sarah was dressed as a witch, her black hat slightly askew, and Lily had the same idea, but wore a purple dress instead. I had gone as a skeleton, my mom having carefully painted my face with white and black makeup. We were in good spirits, laughing and joking as we made our way down the neighborhood streets, eager to fill our pillowcases with as much candy as we could carry. We'd been at it for over an hour, and our bags were getting heavy. Still, we were determined to hit every house on this side of the neighborhood before calling it a night. As we ventured farther, we found ourselves on a quieter street, one that wasn't as well lit as the others. The houses here were older, more spaced out, and the vibe was definitely different. There was a stillness to this part of the neighborhood that made the hair on the back of my neck prickle. I didn't say anything, though. After all, it was Halloween, and it was supposed to be spooky, right? We approached one of the last houses on the block, an old, dilapidated place that looked like it hadn't seen much care in years. The porch light flickered weakly, and the windows were dark, the curtains drawn. A couple of fake cobwebs had been lazily strung over the railing, but otherwise the house looked like it had been forgotten. I hesitated, glancing at Sarah and Lily, but they were already marching up the cracked walkway, determined to see if this place had any treats to offer. I followed, my gut telling me something was off, but not wanting to seem like a wimp. We knocked on the door, waiting for the usual friendly face with a bowl of candy. Instead, the door creaked open slowly, revealing a man standing in the shadows just inside. At first, I could barely make out his features, but as he stepped forward into the weak light from the porch, I felt a chill run down my spine. He was tall and thin, with greasy black hair that looked like it hadn't been washed in days. His skin had a pale, almost sickly hue, and his eyes, cold and piercing, were locked onto us with an unsettling intensity. He was wearing an old tattered jacket that hung loosely from his bony frame, and the corners of his mouth twisted into a smile that made my stomach churn. "Well, well, well," he said, his voice smooth, yet somehow menacing. "Look at you three little trick-or-treaters." He leaned against the doorframe, his crooked smile widening as his gaze shifted between us. "Why don't you come inside?" he suggested, his voice dropping into a playful, almost teasing tone. "I've got something special for kids like you. Something much better than the candy they're handing out around here." I felt a wave of unease wash over me, and I could see the same look of uncertainty flicker across Sarah and Lily's faces. Sarah, being the bravest of the group, smiled nervously and shook her head. "No thanks, we're just looking for candy," she said, trying to keep the situation light. But the man didn't move from the door. Instead, his smile grew wider, more sinister. He leaned closer, his eyes narrowing as he spoke again, this time with a darker edge. "Oh, come on," he insisted. "It's Halloween. What's the harm in a little fun?" The way he said it sent a shiver down my spine, and I instinctively took a step back. My eyes darted to Sarah and Lily, who were both standing frozen in place, clearly as uncomfortable as I was. "We should go," I whispered under my breath, hoping they'd take the hint. Sarah nodded slightly, but before we could move, the man took a step forward, blocking our path off the porch. His smile had vanished, replaced by a look of cold calculation. "You're missing out," he said, his voice now a low growl. "Once you're inside, you won't want to leave." Panic surged through me, and I grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her back gently but urgently. "We have to go," I said, my voice louder now, the fear creeping into my words. But the man didn't budge. His hand shot out, grabbing Sarah's wrist before she could step away. "Just a little closer," he said, his voice almost a whisper, his grip tightening around her arm. Sarah gasped, trying to pull free, but the man held on, his eyes gleaming with something dark, something dangerous. Without thinking, I yanked Sarah's arm hard, and she stumbled back, freeing herself from the man's grasp. All three of us turned and bolted down the porch steps, our hearts pounding in our chests as we ran. I could hear the man's laughter behind us, echoing through the night. High-pitched, twisted, and far too loud. It followed us down the street, growing fainter but no less chilling as we sprinted toward the safety of the main road. We didn't stop until we were several blocks away. our breaths coming in ragged gasps as we finally slowed down. None of us said anything for a moment, too shaken to speak. I glanced back over my shoulder, half expecting to see the man standing at the end of the street, watching us with that same eerie grin, but he was nowhere to be seen. Still, the memory of his cold, gripping hand and the way his eyes had gleamed in the darkness lingered in my mind, leaving me with a sense of unease that wouldn't go away. "I don't know what that was," Lily finally said, her voice trembling, "but we're never going back there." Sarah and I nodded in agreement, both too shaken to argue. We walked the rest of the way home in silence, the excitement of the night completely gone, replaced by a gnawing sense of fear that clung to us long after Halloween had ended. Even as I lay in bed that night, trying to shake off the lingering dread, I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if we had stepped inside that house.